The young woman in the wedding dress was crying so hard, she didn't notice Michael Jackson standing 3 feet away from her. Wait, because what he did in the next 90 minutes wasn't just unexpected. It became the most closely guarded secret of their marriage. And when their grandson found one photograph, 32 years later, it explained why his grandparents had spent their entire lives giving to strangers. It was Thursday, September 19th, 1991, and the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles was winding down from Michael Jackson's Heal LA charity gala. $2 million raised for children's hospitals. 3 songs performed. 1,000 hands shaken. Now Michael just wanted his room, his suite on the top floor, and maybe some room service. His security team, Bill and Frank, walked behind him toward the private elevators. His signature sequined black jacket felt heavy after 3 hours of performance. That's when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in this expensive, polished environment. Someone was crying. Not the delicate, controlled tears you might see at a formal event, but the kind of desperate, heartbroken sobbing that comes from real disappointment. Michael stopped walking. Bill and Frank noticed immediately and moved closer, their hands instinctively going to their earpieces. But Michael raised one gloved hand, signaling them to wait. He tilted his head slightly, listening. The sound was coming from around the corner, near the service elevator. Michael took 3 quiet steps forward and peered around the marble column. There, standing in front of the elevator doors, was a young woman in a wedding dress. It wasn't an expensive designer gown, but it was a real wedding dress with a traditional veil and borrowed pearl necklace. The fabric showed signs of careful alterations, but what struck Michael most was the look of absolute devastation on her face. Next to her stood a young man in a dark suit that was clearly borrowed. The shoulders were too wide, the sleeves too long. He was holding the woman close, whispering something in her ear, but his own eyes were wet with tears. In his other hand, he clutched a small bouquet of white carnations that looked like they'd been bought from a grocery store. Behind them stood an older woman, probably in her 50s, holding what appeared to be a small portable cassette player. She was patting the young woman's shoulder, trying to offer comfort, but she looked just as heartbroken. Michael stood there for a moment, watching this scene of quiet devastation unfold in the service corridor of one of Los Angeles' most expensive hotels. Then he heard the young man speak, and those words hit Michael like a physical blow. "Maria, I'm so sorry. I know you wanted music. I know you wanted dancing and flowers and everything beautiful, but this is all we have. This room, this hour, and us. I promise you, baby, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you." The woman Maria shook her head and pressed her face against his chest. "David, you don't have to make anything up to me. You're here. That's enough. I just wanted one song, you know, just one song to remember." The older woman held up the cassette player. "The batteries died. Mia, I'm so sorry. I thought I checked them, but they're completely dead." Michael looked down at his own hands. His right hand, covered in the white glove that had become his signature, was trembling slightly. He recognized something in this moment. He recognized the feeling of wanting to give someone you love something special and not having the means to do it. He recognized the shame in the young man's eyes, the same shame he'd seen in his father's face decades ago when Joseph couldn't afford to fix the family car. He recognized the disappointment that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with circumstances beyond your control. "Look, you need to understand something about Michael Jackson in 1991. He lived in a fortress, couldn't go anywhere without security, couldn't have normal conversations without someone recording or selling the story. He couldn't trust most people because they wanted something from him. But watching this couple break down over dead batteries and a missing song, Michael made a decision completely unlike his usual protocol. He stepped forward into their line of sight. The older woman saw him first. Her eyes went wide. The cassette player fell from her hands and clattered on the marble floor. Maria looked up, her face still streaked with tears. David turned around, his arm still protectively around Maria's shoulders. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Michael spoke, his voice soft but clear. "Excuse me, I don't mean to intrude, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you two getting married?" Maria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. David managed to nod. "Yes, sir, in about 10 minutes. Downstairs in the Sunset Room." Michael knew the Sunset Room. It was one of the hotel's smallest function spaces, usually used for corporate breakfast meetings or small private dinners. It could hold maybe 30 people, if you packed them in. It was nowhere near the grand ballrooms where he'd just been performing. "And you're getting married without music?" Michael asked gently. The older woman, who turned out to be Maria's Aunt Carmen, finally found her voice. "Mr. Jackson." "Oh my God. Mr. Jackson, we didn't mean to disturb you. We were just—" Michael held up his hand. "You're not disturbing me. I asked you a question. You're getting married without music." David's jaw tightened. Michael recognized that expression too, pride warring with reality. "We work in the hotel kitchen, Mr. Jackson. Maria's in catering. I'm a line cook. We get a discount on the room rental, but we couldn't afford a band or a DJ. My aunt brought her cassette player, but the batteries died, and all the stores nearby are closed." Maria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "We have each other, Mr. Jackson. That's what matters. We don't need—" "You need music," Michael interrupted, but his voice was kind. "Every wedding needs music. Every bride deserves to hear a song on the most important day of her life." Carmen was shaking her head, still in shock. "Mr. Jackson, we couldn't possibly ask you to." "You're not asking," Michael said simply. "I'm offering. If you'll have me, I'd be honored to sing at your wedding." The silence that followed was complete. Carmen shook her head, still in shock. David's jaw tightened, pride warring with reality. "We work in the hotel kitchen, Mr. Jackson," David said. "Maria's in catering. I'm a line cook. We get a room discount, but we couldn't afford a band or DJ. The cassette batteries died, and all the stores nearby are closed." And when the justice of the peace said, "You may kiss the bride," Michael Jackson began to sing. He sang Human Nature without any accompaniment. No band, no piano, no backing track. Just his voice filling that small room with warmth and beauty, and something that felt almost sacred. He sang every word as if he'd written the song for this exact moment, for this exact couple. The acoustics in the Sunset Room were terrible. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The carpet was stained. But none of that mattered because Michael Jackson was singing at a wedding in front of 23 people, and it was the most beautiful thing any of them had ever heard. Maria buried her face in David's chest and sobbed. David held her and cried openly. Carmen covered her mouth with both hands, tears running down her face. The 7-year-old kid stood on his chair to see better, his eyes wide with wonder. Even the justice of the peace had to wipe his eyes. When Michael finished the song, he walked directly to the newlyweds. He shook David's hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Reyes. You take care of her." Then he turned to Maria and gently took her hand. "Congratulations, Mrs. Reyes. You two are going to be very happy. I can tell." Maria couldn't speak. She just nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He pressed it into David's hand. "Go have a nice dinner somewhere tonight. Somewhere with candles and white tablecloths. Somewhere you'll remember." David opened the envelope, and his hands started shaking. Inside were 5 $100 bills, $500 in 1991. More money than either of them made in 2 weeks of work. "Mr. Jackson, we can't," David started. "Yes, you can," Michael said firmly but gently. And you will. Consider it a wedding gift. Use it to celebrate your marriage. And someday when you're in a position to help someone else, you'll remember this night, and you'll pay it forward. He looked around the room at all the stunned faces staring at him. I'm going to ask something of all of you. I'm asking you not to tell anyone about this. No press, no tabloids, no stories sold to magazines. This isn't about me. This is about Maria and David starting their life together. Can you give them that gift? Can you let this stay private? Every person in that room nodded. Some said, "Yes, sir," out loud. Others just nodded silently, understanding that they were being entrusted with something precious. Michael smiled, gave a small wave, and walked out of the sunset room with Bill and Frank following close behind. The entire visit had lasted less than 30 minutes. He went back to his suite, ordered room service, and never mentioned the incident to anyone in his management team, his family, or his inner circle. He didn't call the press. He didn't use it for publicity. He didn't even tell his own mother. He just did it because it felt like the right thing to do, and then he moved on with his life. But here's where the story becomes extraordinary. Here's where we see the true impact of what Michael Jackson did that night. Maria and David Reyes used that $500 exactly as Michael had suggested. They went to a restaurant called Le Dorme on Sunset Boulevard, a place they never could have afforded on their own. They ordered wine and steak and dessert. They talked about what had happened, replaying every moment, every word, every note of that song, and they made a promise to each other. They promised that they would never forget what Michael Jackson had done for them, and they promised that whenever they had the chance, they would do the same kind of thing for someone else. They would look for people who needed help, who needed a little magic in their lives, and they would provide it. No questions asked. No recognition needed. Over the next 32 years, Maria and David Reyes became known in their East LA neighborhood as the couple who helped everyone. Groceries for strangers, counting pennies, wedding expenses for young couples. Every charity that knocked. They lived modestly. David became head chef, Maria catering manager, 3 kids in a small Boyle Heights house. But they gave constantly. Their children asked, "Why do we always help people?" Maria and David would say, "Someone helped us once. We promised to pass it on." But they never mentioned Michael Jackson. Remember how Michael asked everyone in the room to keep it private? Every single person honored that request. For 32 years, 23 people kept a secret. In an age of social media and instant fame, in a culture that rewards people for selling stories about celebrities, 23 people said nothing. That speaks to the power of that moment. That speaks to how sacred it felt. Maria and David kept the photograph in a small box in their bedroom closet. On their anniversary every year, they would take it out, look at it together, and remember, they never showed it to anyone. Not their children, not their friends, not their pastor. It was their private treasure, their own secret proof that magic was real. Until September 19th, 2023, exactly 32 years to the day after their wedding, David and Maria Reyes threw a huge anniversary celebration. All 3 of their children came. Their 7 grandchildren were there, friends from the neighborhood, co-workers past and present, church members. The party was held in the community center of their church, the same church where they'd volunteered for decades. During the celebration, their grandson Miguel, 24, and studying documentary filmmaking at UCLA, stood up to give a speech about his grandparents' legendary generosity. Then he said something that made the room go silent. "I never understood where they learned this, but last month, organizing old photos, I found something in their closet from their wedding day. On the back were 7 words I didn't understand." Miguel pulled out the photograph. The image was projected behind him. There, grainy but unmistakable, was Michael Jackson standing next to young Maria and David. The room erupted. People gasped. Maria covered her face. David, 76 now, and walking with a cane, stood slowly. The words on the back, Miguel continued, his voice shaking, said, "The night Michael taught us everything." He turned to his grandparents. "So I asked Abuela, and she told me a story I'll never forget." Maria stood up, tears already streaming down her face. For the first time in 32 years, she told the complete story of what Michael Jackson had done for them. She described every detail: the dead batteries, the service corridor, Michael's gentle voice, the song, the $500, the promise they'd made to each other. The room was absolutely silent, except for the sound of people crying. Maria's voice cracked multiple times, but she pushed through. David stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, nodding at the parts he remembered most clearly. "Michael Jackson didn't just sing at our wedding," David said when Maria finished. "He taught us what it means to be truly generous. He didn't do it for publicity. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because he saw two kids who needed something beautiful, and he had the power to provide it. That lesson shaped everything we became." Maria wiped her eyes. "Every time we helped someone over the years, every time we gave when we didn't have much to give ourselves, we thought about that night. We thought about Michael standing in that tiny room, singing with all his heart for an audience of 23. That's real love. That's real generosity. And that's what we wanted our lives to represent." The video of Miguel's presentation went viral within hours. Former Century Plaza employees confirmed the whispers they'd kept secret for decades. Carmen, 87, and in a nursing home, smiled, "I've been keeping that secret for 32 years. I'm so glad I can finally tell people." The Justice of the Peace, 92 and living in Palm Springs. "I've performed over 4,000 weddings, but that one was special. Michael asked us to keep it private, and I honored that." One by one, people came forward with stories of how Maria and David had helped them over the years. Rosa Martinez, a former neighbor, "They saved my family twice. Groceries when we had none. College books for my daughter. Now I understand. It all came from that one night." The photograph that Miguel found became one of the most widely shared images on social media that year. Not because it was high quality. It wasn't. Not because it showed Michael at his most glamorous. It didn't. But because it captured something rare and precious. Proof that fame and success mean nothing if you don't use them to lift others up. In the final interview Maria gave before her passing in early 2024, she was asked what she would say to Michael Jackson if she could see him again. "I would tell him thank you, not just for the song, but for showing us that the most important thing you can give someone is the feeling that they matter, that their happiness is worth your time." She paused. "Because of what he did, we spent 32 years trying to be like him. We tried to see people who needed magic and provide it. We weren't famous. We didn't have his talent, but we had his lesson, and that changed everything." The story of Michael Jackson and the Rares' wedding is a reminder of what true generosity looks like. Not grand gestures for cameras, not credit or recognition, just seeing a moment where you can make a difference and acting, especially when nobody's watching. Michael never publicized what he did, never mentioned it in interviews, never used it for his image. He simply did it because it was right. And that, more than any record or award or song, is his real legacy. The Sunset Room no longer exists. The hotel was renovated in 2018, but the impact lives on in 3 generations of the Rares family, in the hundreds they helped, in everyone who hears this story and decides to do something kind for a stranger. Because that's what Michael taught us, that everybody deserves to feel special, that you don't need a fortune to change a life, that the best giving is the kind nobody knows about until long after you're gone, that one moment of kindness can echo through decades, touching lives you'll never meet. And sometimes, when we're very lucky, Someone finds a photograph in a closet and shares a secret that reminds the world what real love looks like.